Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk about how to learn Spanish, like what is the first step to do when you start learning that language. I decided to talk about Spanish because most like English speaking people that I know, they want to kind of learning a Latin language, and Spanish is the most popular one, so I'll start with that. If you don't know, I'm French, but I speak English, Spanish, and currently learning Portuguese to a more fluent level because right now I'm intermediate, so I know how to learn a language and I would like to share that to you as well. And I noticed that many people make the mistakes of starting to learn a language by doing like grammar exercise or reading small text, but they don't listen to that language, and it's the most illogical mistake for me because it's basically putting you in a bad position for later. Basically, because if you start with a grammar or if you start by reading short text in Spanish, in that sense, you don't know how Spanish sounds to you. So you will basically start reading Spanish text in your head, or like by reading it, but with the English pronunciation. And that's why many English speaking people that I know still have the strong English like pronunciation when they talk Spanish, and you don't want that at all. Like, no, I'm not talking about having the perfect native accent, because even me, I don't have it. Like, you can hear my English and you might hear like that I'm French or maybe that I'm a foreigner, but I still try to pronounce correctly the words in English. And my goal is not to talk perfectly like a native. I don't really care about this. It's possible, but it's not my objective. My goal is just to talk to you and that you can understand. And many people don't make the difference as well, like between having perfect pronunciation, making bad pronunciation mistakes, and just talk for communication, but make it clear for the other person to understand you. And when you start learning a language, it's very important, very, very important that you start listening to that language a lot. In that case, it would be Spanish. So you have to listen to songs, to shows in Spanish or movies. Like, you can try to find your favorite show and find the dub version in Spanish if you prefer. But you need to really listen to a lot of Spanish. And the thing is, many people misunderstand that by, if I listen to Spanish, I don't understand anything. That's the goal. The goal is not to understand. The goal is to listen. And being aware of the different sounds that you have in Spanish, because it's very different from having the sounds in English. You can see it with the way Spanish people or English people talk that language if they don't know how it's pronounced. Like, they talk Spanglish, they talk English with a really bad accent, like more pronunciation in that case, and they speak English with a strong Spanish accent, but it's not the best, because then you don't understand everything. And in that sense, it would be the same for you. If you speak Spanish with a strong English accent, it might be very difficult for the other person to understand, and you don't want that. And so the first step is really to listen to a lot of content in Spanish and being aware of it. You don't have to understand everything, but you have to listen to the different sounds that you have, the different ways of saying words, and the more you do that, the more you will start recognizing the words. And the more you do that, the more your brain will have the sounds of Spanish in your brain. Like, the neurons for that language will start to be more clear for you, and it will be like it will make more sense. It's basically getting more familiar to the sounds of that language, you know? You know how sometimes you just, yeah, for example, if you don't know Spanish at all, the first time you hear Spanish, you're like, what is this blah blah? Like, it's just like blah, blah, blah. Oh, estoy hablando mañana porque blah, 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 blah. And in your head, you're like, I know it's a foreign language. I don't even know which language it is. Like, I might mistake it for Italian or French or whatever. And then you start to listen to Spanish content and you're like, oh, now I recognize in the street that this person is speaking Spanish. And I recognize some words that they're saying. And this feeling of like awareness of that language is what you have to get at the beginning. It is what you want. And you only get that by listening to a lot of content. So I recommend to listen to a lot of Spanish content. And if you want to make it active, you can try to pronounce it as well. So for example, if I watch a show and they're talking in Spanish and they're saying like in a dialogue, okay, me voy a comer una tortilla mañana. Then you pause at this sentence and you're like, okay, me voy a comer, and you try to do the same, you try to pronounce it. And the more you do that, the more you build that pronunciation in your mouth as well. You start to recognize the sound. And it's really very, very important at the start. So I hope it helps. And I see you next week for more advice on how to learn a language. See you soon.